This is what is left on Carpenter Island. I just want you to grab your map and read what's on there about this, and you'll realize very quickly how important this is. This is a one-of-a-kind site. This is kind of like Stonehenge.
Oh my gosh. It's kind of like Stonehenge.
building way out on the far shore in front of us. That's Ernie's Cottage. There was a book called Two in the Bush, written by a family, the last name was Moore, back in the 50s. They came up here. He was a college professor. And that's long before the 651 was built. That was in 1967. So this family from the U.S. came up here by rail, came to Missanabie and hauled in a bunch of building supplies and built a cabin there. There's a little lake in behind it called Allen Lake that's really good for shooting ducks, geese, waterfowl, good hunting area. If you ever get a chance to read this book, Two in the Bush, the first book ever written on Dog Lake, and it's got some really interesting stories about families that lived here for the last 100 years, when the Hudson's Bay Company office was still open, when the tavern was still open, when there was no road into Missanabie, there was no Missanabie Cree First Nation yet. A really interesting view into this lake in the 1950s, 1960s, late 1940s. Rip out that wheel and get you a tiller.
I know. That tiller is much easier.
Any part of your mouth and I'll tie
you. Coming, Mark. There you go. Get a little wobble.
Pull your boy up a little bit, just because you're on the wind side here. You hold him a little bit more. Okay, so you guys didn't hear this earlier in the talk, but I was telling Mike about the original name for the lake, when you came about. So my wife Kathy and I found an old article from 1881, I think it was, and it was Alexander Bell's explorations of this neck of the woods in the northeastern part of Ontario. And he had a very interesting, very crude, very inaccurate map of Dog Lake, and it was called Wawa-Gigama Lake. So a friend of mine, Brian, went to that said the name to him and said, what does it mean? Because Wawa's in it. That's the first thing I thought of. And translated it, translation came up as bright or shiny, curved or bent lake. That's exactly what I brought. So this name I've been able to find is Wawa-Gigama. Bent or curved, shining or bright lake. That's Ojibwe? That's Ojibwe. I'm sure there's a Cree name in there somewhere. That was the name on the map. A lot of the people that the Canadian Geological Survey hired as canoeists, a lot of them were Ojibways back in those days, so I suspect that a lot of the names are biased to the Ojibwe, to the Anishinaabe language because of that. Although I still run into the odd Saunders and Quackajeesic names from Chapel, from Moose Cree, from up the Bay area. So there are some names out there. At that time, the original first dam on this lake went in 1930. So if you can just imagine, like on that TV program, that would suck all the water out of the lake and drop it down about 6 or 7 or 8 feet. suddenly we would not have been able to go through that gap that we just came through. I had 6 feet on my depth sounder.
I had
8, yeah. So if we could magically take the dam out and go back 700 years, there would have been a set of narrows or a set of rapids or a little stream or something, and this might have been a separate lake. Island, etc. And if we go up further up to the narrows into the Posh Bay, there's a few places there. The sandbar comes way out off the left shoreline. There's a few places there where the depth goes to about 18 feet, 16 feet. So that might have been a set of rapids as well. But there are lots of stories about a time long ago when Dog Lake was not one lake, but it was a series of lakes. One lake there to the narrows, maybe a lake here, and then maybe the big lake that we just came through, where the Three Sisters were. So I got looking again at my accent, because we always find these things with my accent. We found a reference in a Bureau of Mines article from 1894 or 1897 that talked about a separate lake north of the Posh Narrows, and it was called Matagami. And if you do the Ojibwe translation, that means branch in the lake. So way back in history, Dog Lake, when the water levels were normal and they weren't artificially raised by the colonial system, might have been 3 separate lakes. Matagami, whatever the name of this one might have been, and then Wawagigaman. Okay, and then if we go to the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, when the first dam went in, you'll see the name Martagummy or Murtagummy. That was the name that Dog Lake was called back in those days. And then somewhere in the 1950s, 1960s, Dog Lake suddenly appeared. And the best I can tell is that the dog name came from pictographs because it's an obvious shape of a dog's head. Okay. I know it's not much to look at, but behind us, that little island is Carpenter Island. It's probably, from an archaeology point of view, the most important, most significant place on this lake for one reason. It's the only ethno-historically verified, so that means it's been verified by people who live in this area, the indigenous people. And it's the only archaeologically verified tradition in Canada. So I mentioned earlier that I had the good fortune of attending a traditional birch bark canoe build in Chapleau about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the master builder is a guy named Chuck Commanda. His granddad was William Commanda, who held 3 wampum belts. This is a pretty important family from Quebec, Eastern Ontario, or Algonquin. And we had the good fortune of having really flat water, and Wakotawin sponsored a tour on the lake that I gave with Chief Rainville, Tim Rainville. And the lake was so flat, we were able to pull up on the north side with 3 pontoon boats and tie them down so they didn't get dented too much, and all 30 of us got out and walked on the island. All kinds of blueberries, all kinds of wild raspberries. But there's a few things that Chuck, the master canoe builder, saw with his eyes that I had never thought of. First of all, this north shore is really shallow. Nice, easy, sloping rocks. You can beach your canoe or a boat or anything in there. It's easy. It's a great place to soak the birch bark when you're building a canoe. It has a little more depth of soil on it than most places, so there's enough soil there to hold stakes to build the forms for the canoe. And that entire island right now, I can't tell you for sure that it was that way 1,000 years ago, but most of those trees are spruce, black spruce. What do we use spruce for? Spruce root. That entire canoe we built in Chapleau is held together by pitch, spruce pitch, and root.
One of those Chapleau canoes was at our site. They actually had a booth set up.
You were at the Missanabie Cree?
No, they brought a canoe here.
Oh, okay, yeah. I was at the powwow last week, and they had the new canoe there on display. So 13 days, 13-foot canoe. The historical records tell us that a family of 3 could carry all of their gear, all their family stuff in a 13-footer. I was really lucky. I got to paddle it, stern paddle, with Chief Tanty's sister in the front, who doesn't paddle much at all. And they are just so beautiful to paddle, those things. They're fragile, but they're really narrow at the seat, so when you J-stroke, you don't have to cry for no keel. They track pretty well. And then there was a hot dog out there that did just a solo in the canoe, and he was feathering it and spinning it on a dime. When that thing's dry, it'll be 37, 38, 39, 40 pounds when it's dry. And everything you need to fix it is either on the shoreline or in your pocket. So Chuck always carries a little pouch of hardened pitch, often little patches of birch bark, and if he puts a hole in one of his canoes, he keeps the patch on site and continue on later today. So there's a couple of questions that came up. The north side would be great for soaking birch bark. There's lots of spruce there. There's lots of spruce on both mainland shorelines here. So, and lots of pitch in the area. But so the ingredients to build a canoe are there. But what don't we see when we look at the shoreline? We don't see any canoe-grade birch. Big 150-year-old, 140-year-old birch that have a diameter of 55 or 60 centimeters, big enough that one piece would make a 13 or a 14-footer. The other thing that is unusual, and we're not going to talk about it until we get there, but is at the Dog Lake pictograph site, there's only one image of a canoe. And that was observed by Conway back in the 1970s. And even using D-stretch hardware on digital pictures, we can't find that canoe now. So I'm kind of surprised that there isn't more images of canoes on the rock art on this lake, given that the most important canoe building site in Ontario is right there. So those are the two things that I want you to think about, that we don't have a lot of birch in this area anymore. Most of the canoe-grade birch are on the north shore of Crooked Lake, or in Lake Superior Provincial Park, or over at White Sands, or at the Michipicoten Reserve at White Sands. There are some big ones there. But we also know that that climate change is having an impact on the birch. They're not a very long-lived tree, but they're very fast-growing. And has anybody here read Suzanne Simard's book, In Search of the Mother Tree? No? It's a book you got to pick up and read. She's a Canadian that did some research in BC, and she showed very clearly that birch trees, when they're first growing, supply sugars through their roots to Douglas fir when the Douglas fir are little.
Oh, neat.
And when the Douglas fir eventually catch up and get bigger than the birch and live longer, they shuttle sugar through their roots to supplement what comes in from the soil for the birch. So here we have that good example in Western science of all my relations, trees that can talk to one another. And remember, the oral tradition is that there was a time in this world where all 4 orders of creation, the rock people, the tree and plant people, the animals, the four-leggeds, the wingeds, the swimmers, the crawlers, and we humans could all talk to one another and understand one another. That's in, I've seen that story in Haudenosaunee, from my neck of the woods down at Six Nations. It's in lots of stories up in this part of the world. And we lost that ability. Some of us still are able to hear the animals and maybe hear the trees, but most of us have lost that intuition. So that's, I know it doesn't look like much, but the other camera, take a picture of that. And remember that there's probably a Cree and an Ojibwe name for that island, and if I run across it, I'll get this guy to share it. Okay? It just doesn't show up as any different than Carpenter Island. So even its colonial name, Carpenter Island,
Right.
gives away its use.
It's beauty.
So where did the birch come from? Was there birch here originally that they used?
I suspect there were. I have a really good geology friend, Mike, who's the other there, who's at the Baby Bridge. Mike knows this land beaver or birch bay because we have all kinds of birch back in there, but they're all little guys. The beavers get them before they get eaten back up. So right from this vantage point, we've got the original name of the lake. We now know that Dog Lake probably was a series of lakes. And remember, we're on the Lake Superior side of the height of land. So Wabatanguchi, the lake just past that shoreline up north of us, drains into here. We drain into Manitowick. Manitowick drains into the Michipicoten River. Michipicoten River goes into Lake Superior. So we were talking about serpent holes and about ways for curlytail to be able to visit the inland lakes. It's all connected, guys. Okay. And now you've seen Carpenter Island. And like I say, it's not much to see. Conway did a dig there, and surprisingly, all they found were some flint tools and some beads that were historic, that were traded.
Oh.
So post-contact. Not much else found there. And I suspect it's because hydro destroyed most of what was there. Because we might have expected piles of flat rocks along with stakes to support the shape of the canoe when it's being built. Okay? This is a really important part. And one other thing I'm going to point out, because nobody knows this, very few people know this is Little Brother Creek right here. Another extensive wetland. And wetlands are in danger in our part of the world. But if you follow that creek back, eventually it comes to Brothers Lake. And we're aware of an a very ancient trail that runs from Brothers Lake to Manitou Mountain. It's never, people might still use it, but nobody talks about it. So that's something else we've been looking for.